Welcome to the Helicopter Podcast, your go-to source for all things rotorcraft. I'm Halsey Schider, bringing you the stories, insights, and conversations from around the helicopter industry. Whether you're a seasoned pilot, a maintainer, or you're just passionate about helicopters, this is the podcast for you.
Business aircraft as a whole have always been kind of seen as this glamorous section of the world. A lot of people give us a hard time with talking about climate responsibility and economic responsibility. It's not just people flying these $1 million machines just for fun. We're using them for business. It's a tool. We're like 0.00 something percentage of the actual pollutants. So why are we the ones that are constantly getting beat up over it? And I think it's just because we have that glamour and appeal. We're easy targets in that way. But because of that, we're the innovators. We were the first ones to push composites in aircraft and winglets. Winglets are everywhere now, and that helps with efficiency, right? SAF is another part of that we've been championing in business aviation that you now see everywhere.
This episode of the Helicopter Podcast is made possible with a generous sponsorship from Metro Aviation and Robinson Helicopter. What's happening, guys? It's Halsey Schider with the Helicopter Podcast, and I am stoked to be chatting it up again today. My phone is buzzing, so I'm glad that happened early on. Reminds me that I need to put it on D&D. Ian, maybe do the same.
Yeah.
I always forget. This is like podcast, 170 plus or something, and here I am. I'm always like, put my phone on D&D, and I never do. And then halfway through, it's like blowing up. So I'm glad it happened early. To our listeners, thanks so much for tuning into the Helicopter Podcast, and of course to Vertical Plus for making this podcast possible. We love that relationship that we have with Vertical Plus and the Vertical HeliCASTS atmosphere, the ecosphere, whatever you want to call it, kind of your one-stop shop for everything helicopter and helicopter podcasting. Really stoked to be on that platform. And of course, to our sponsors, so excited to have you on board. And it's you, the listeners. I have sponsors because you all listen, you all tune in, you all say what's up. I love that, and I appreciate that. So thank you so much. Today, a little bit of a different conversation today. I'm talking with Ian Lumpp, Executive Sales Director at globalair.com. And we're not so much talking about what he's currently doing, even though we will, but he's just has an extensive background in business aviation as a whole. And something that I've learned as I've gotten into the airplane side of, say, brokering, I've learned that helicopters, in my opinion, at least seem to be a little bit underrepresented when it comes to, say, like business aviation, MBAA, and all that fun stuff. Ian is also a former recipient of, I believe, right, the 40 under 40 for MBAA, and now sits on the council for that. So I'd love to talk about that, learn about that. I'm under 40, so maybe I can do it. We'll see.
Yeah,
I've made a little bit of a push. We'll see what happens, and just excited to have Ian on and see where the conversation goes. And he's also a podcast host for the Crosscheck podcast. Him and his boy Rob. In fact, I joined them last year where they asked me all about helicopter aviation. And so that was super fun. So Ian, welcome to the Helicopter Podcast. Good to have you on.
Thanks, man. It's exciting to be on the other side of this. Yeah, we interviewed you almost a year ago exactly now. And now here we are, you're interviewing me. So
it's crazy. What do you prefer? Do you prefer interviewing or being interviewed?
I like to just talk, so I don't want to have a script in front of me or a bunch of pre-work done, which thankfully Rob handles most of that on our podcast, actually. But I'd rather be the interviewee.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I call it laziness, but I always, looked to, say, like the Joe Rogan podcast for inspiration, because I feel like he just sits down and starts talking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, shit, I think I can do that. Right. So I've occasionally will write like an outline or a script, especially like if it's with like an OEM or something. But to me, that feels like too organized. For me, this is all about like if I'm at a bar and I bump into you and we're drinking a beer and we find out that we're both in aviation, whether it be helicopter aviation or just business aviation as a whole, ultimately, what would we talk about, right?
Yeah.
My wife knows it all too well. We would talk about helicopters, right? When I worked at Maverick Helicopters, it was, me and like 70 other guys, pilots, and, we'd fly helicopters all day, and then we'd drink some beers at night, and we'd talk about helicopters all night, you know? And that was kind of like the early on inspiration to do it. So I like both. I like talking in general. When I get interviewed, sometimes I feel like I'm too honest sometimes. So like I say things like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. And so you always kind of like look back at it. I feel like at least if I'm interviewing, I'm a little bit more in the control, but then I
Yeah.
also say stupid things. So I guess I'm just, I'm here just doing my thing. But
I'm with you. I'm with you there.
Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself and, your journey and what you've done within business aviation, and also what is business aviation? Kind of like what, just the overarching bit of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, first, I guess business aviation, for those that don't know, is just the niche within the niche of general aviation that all of the 91 operators flying corporate flight departments, and then everyone else who wants to tag onto that, if you're a 135 or an MRO that specializes on the smaller jets, it all kind of fits into business aviation. NBAA is the one name that kind of gets thrown around a lot with business aviation because it is the National Business Aviation Association, so that's probably what a lot of people recognize or know. And of course, they have their banner event every year in Las Vegas that people attend and go to and learn about the industry. I got involved with business aviation when I first started as a classified sales rep for a magazine called Business Air, specialized in jets, helicopters, turboprops, and to your point, we probably had like one helicopter to 100 business aircraft,
Yeah, of course.
and it still kind of feels that way. As I've now grown up, so to speak, and lead the sales team within globalair.com, doing a similar thing. We have a bunch of aircraft listed on there. It's a great platform if you're looking to buy or sell aircraft, but it's probably 1 to 50 or something like that heli to fixed wing aircraft. That doesn't mean that they don't exist. Is part of it just education, or is part of it availability? I don't know. But business aircraft as a whole have always been kind of seen as this glamorous section of the world. A lot of people give us a hard time. I think that's part of the reason why eBase didn't happen this year, because there was all the hot water and backlash a couple of years ago with people talking about climate responsibility and economic responsibility. It's not just people flying these $1 million machines just for fun. We're using them for business. It's a tool. There's just a lot of education that needs to happen behind that. So
Yeah, that's, the whole climate thing, and just I will state here that obviously as we, move forward in progression, I think we all have a responsibility to take the best possible care of our earth. You know, I was talking to my friend about this the other day. I think it starts with like, not littering, personally.
yeah,
You look at some of the oceans, and I'm pretty sure there's lots of garbage in them. Like I think as humans by and large, we've done a lot of disrespect to our earth. But I'm not like a climate change. I'm not really knowledgeable about that science, fully. So I don't really have a full point on it, other than like, yeah, we have billions of people on Earth, and we're probably not doing great things. But I feel like aviation is at highest risk of being most affected, and it's an easy target, obviously, with the emissions. And I know a lot of, especially like the big, call it like the 121 carriers, like the Deltas and Americans, and they've had to really make a big marketing push. Even when you book your ticket, it's like, congratulations, you're on a 45% less emissions flight,
oh
and
yeah,
so it's a big push on that stuff. But it's interesting. It's a scary thing. I remember former AOPA president, Darren Pleasance, I think I'm saying it right. I was at a talk with him, and he was talking about one of his biggest, things right now is 100 low lead, right? And I know that's kind of more GA, general aviation,
Yeah.
but getting the lead out of fuels, which makes a lot of sense. But I feel like there's a big push, when it comes to pollution, noise pollution. All these things are affecting aviation as a whole. And I think actually who gets the brunt of that would be the business aviation that you're talking about, the smaller jets. And a big one, of course, is the helicopters. Everyone hates helicopters. They're noisy. They fly low. Sometimes they orbit over an area for an hour because it's a police helicopter or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, what has kind of been your? I mean, I know that you're pretty well connected in that world. What has been kind of your position on what the industry needs to do to make sure that we're protecting ourselves? So folks that are really extreme on the climate stuff don't make it impossible for us to operate.
Yeah, I've had the luxury of working with the NBAA Pro Council and actually going to Congress and talking to representatives about sustainable aviation fuel, our impact on all of this, and I think the biggest thing for me as I've gone through and done that is learning that we're like point, something percentage of the actual pollutant that's being put out there from fossil fuels. So why are we the ones that are constantly getting beat up over it? And I think it's just because we have that glamour and appeal. We're easy targets in that way. But when you talk about how much we're actually impacting it, it's so low, it doesn't really affect anything if we were to disappear tomorrow, but you'll notice it on the business side if business aviation didn't exist anymore because enough people got pissed off about it and made it a bigger deal than it is. But because of that, we're the innovators. Ed Bolin and NBAA always get up and talk about how we were the first ones to push composites in aircraft, and now you kind of see that everywhere. And winglets are everywhere now, and that helps with efficiency, right? SAF is another part of that we've been championing in business aviation that you now see everywhere. And when you book your flight with United or Delta, it asks you if you want to pay a couple bucks more to help your carbon footprint so that they can buy sustainable aviation fuel on the grander scale for those guys, because they're the ones that are producing a lot more of this than business aviation too, right? It's it's such a small thing, but it's in the big picture, it is a huge thing because it's a marketing bit, a tool.
Yeah. Well,
What
it's a big money thing too, right? I do think it's easy to like stick it to the man, right? And you see these Facebook posts all the time. You wouldn't believe what celebrity flew, 500 hours last year in their private jet, including one flight that was a minute and 30 seconds long. Like you have all this, the kind of bad press about, celebrities who are utilizing, business aviation. And obviously they are a customer of
Yeah,
that form of travel. But, by and large, again, they also make up a very small percentage of the customers or the people that are using business aviation. On the helicopter side, what I've seen is, even when I started, right, it's 2008 timeframe. It was kind of this mentality of like, well, you live next to an airport when it came to like say noise pollution.
yeah,
And that was just like what we were sticking with. And then we learned, and I got kind of lucky. I was working for, Hillsborough Aviation at the time, and I worked my way up into management. And I got to be a part of the conversations with the Port of Portland who managed the airport there. And these aren't perfect numbers because it's been a long time, but it was around 8,000 specific noise complaints average per year coming in on aircraft and out of the Hillsborough Airport. Out of those 8,000, 7,500 of them were from 4 people, something
yeah,
crazy, right? And you say, okay, well, those are the cuckoos, right? They're not going to get any attention, but they do, right? Then they start putting together organizations. When I was in school there was a thing called CRASH, Concerned Residents Against Student Helicopters. And, they would call it being naive, would say things like, their instructors hardly speak English, right? Because we had a lot of European instructors, you know, some of their instructors are 21 years old, and that actually starts to gain momentum in the community. So
Yeah.
before you know it, you're driving around Hillsborough to go to flight school, and there's all these crash signs near the airport. You're like, oh man, I think these people are starting to make some headway. And so I think it's a very loud. It doesn't take that many people, and then we see big effects. Airports begin to close. Um, I think in Santa Monica soon enough, Santa Monica's,
Yeah.
closing down. There's a lot of curfew, specific in California and Oregon and things like that, um, where aircraft can't land, past a certain time or start before a certain time. And I think that that's all restrictive. Some of it's okay, but I think we could be going down a path where it's not great. And I think when you're just in aviation, whether you're a pilot, mechanic, or whatnot, and you talk about organizations like MBAA, or in our case VAI, and I had the pleasure of podcasting with the president of VAI recently, Francois. You really learn that these organizations, what your monthly dues are going towards are to, yes, put together a great show yearly, both for VAI and MBAA, but it's also, going to Washington, D.C. and talking to Congress and talking to our leaders and making sure that they see our side, right? They hear all the other voices. Now they've got to hear our voice.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting. I think we're a little bit of a different direction of conversation, which I appreciate.
I mean,
What with you, being part of groups going to Congress and things like that, what led you personally to make a decision to be more involved with, I'm guessing that was a NBAA chapter?
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
Yeah. I've always had the bug, or whatever you want to call it, the itch, just to get involved and be more active. It's the same reason why I pushed Rob when we first started talking about maybe doing a podcast. Like, well, let's do it. Let's just put a voice out there and see what happens. Because I don't like to sit idle. And I have a job and it keeps me very busy and I'm grateful for it. But outside of that, what else am I doing with my time? Yeah, I've got 4 kids, Cub Scouts, baseball, soccer, all of the things. But within our industry, I think part of what makes me good at my job is also being involved within business aviation. And I stumbled into a happy hour at some business aviation event, met a couple people, and then the next year they were looking for people to join the YoPro Council with the National Business Aviation Association. And my name came up. They invited me on. A couple years later, I was running it as co-chair with my colleague Jamie Munoz, and we're able to put together this coalition essentially of young people in business aviation to go to Congress every year and talk about the things that we want to talk about. We're getting ready to do that again here in about a month. So, we're not as big as the airline association that goes and knocks on their doors, but it it's still impactful and valuable. It gets me excited because then I get to tell my kids what I did, or how I made this. And some of it is even just like, oh yeah, I met Randy Feenstra, representative for my small section of Iowa, and you know what? Everyone thinks he's a jerk. He's not. He's totally decent guy, easy to talk to. And that's just some of the stuff that you don't get to see inside how the sausage is made until you actually get out and get involved. And I enjoy that part of it. So, um, plus, people get to see me and know me. I meet new people that I wouldn't otherwise. And when their department decides to sell their jet, I can help connect them with a broker. That broker lists it on my website. And in a way, I'm still creating business for my business. So it all kind of comes back together.
I mean, there's definitely a business development aspect there. I think if you lead with business development, then you're doing it for, say, the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah.
I think you truly have to be passionate about wanting to make the industry better. My podcast, I didn't even think anyone would listen, to be honest, other than my mom. I've always made that joke. And it's really cool. The impact that I have just through this my little small sliver is incredible. I at VAI this year, I'm a sentimental guy. I get that from my dad. Wear my emotions on my sleeve, and man, people are coming up to me and telling me their story about how the podcast had affected them and how they got in this career, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I got something in my eye." Like
Yeah.
it's so powerful to know that you're doing that. And something that I've learned, I was jaded for a while when it came to organizations like MBAA, VAI, AOPA. Because I felt like, man, I didn't have, I was paying these fees, but I didn't understand why. So they could put on this show.
Yeah.
As I've gotten to know the VAI folks more, they're a sponsor of the podcast even, and I've had opportunities to be able to talk to. He has a new position now, but his name is Cade Clark. He was the government affairs guy for VAI, and now he's doing something else. But being able to learn, oh my gosh, I mean, this guy literally lives in Washington D.C. and is spending, his entire year trying to support the helicopter industry.
Yeah.
Then to me, I'm like, oh, well, that's important, because if the helicopter industry goes away, then I'm not a pilot anymore, right? I'm not a helicopter sales broker anymore. And so one thing that you said that I want to get back to the YoPro Council, but one thing that you said that I found was interesting is you felt like you maybe had a bit of a calling to make a difference. And I feel like one shortcoming of aviation as a whole is we just get kind of typecasted into what we're doing. You're doing your daily grind, flying helicopters or business jets, flight instructing, selling aircraft, whatever it might be, not thinking that the problem isn't your problem, but you're part of the industry in which may have a problem. And so I think something that I've been trying to push more on my podcast is hey, get involved, right? You actually do have a voice, and your voice could be heard, and your voice could actually positively impact the community. So we all have long-term sustainable careers. The helicopter side right now is freaking out, right? Unmanned, aircraft, helicopters specifically, big OEMs are making unmanned platforms and using, their best abilities in marketing to be like, but we're not getting rid of pilots, but it's scary,
Yeah.
And so my call to our listeners is get involved. Specific to the helicopter side, VAI is a wonderful organization that is actually supporting a lot of the initiatives. MBAA on the business side, AOPA for just general, aviation sense. So, you can get involved, and I'm glad, Ian, that you have chosen to do that. And then there's actually some positive results. The networking is great. You make new friends.
Yeah.
That's the best part of this podcast for me. I get to have conversations with people. I create relationships with those people. They're genuine. I become friends with them. And then that could also lead to business opportunity. And who doesn't want to work with their friends, right? So it just kind of makes sense. So it is there is a selfish reason to get involved, but you have to go into it being selfless. YoPro Council initiatives here coming soon for what you guys are talking about in Congress. Are you able to talk about some of those initiatives?
I'll be honest, I don't know what our plan is for this year. Normally it's kind of base level, make sure we're still talking about sustainable aviation fuel because it's always just a hot topic. And more or less going in and telling these people that maybe don't know what business aviation is. Some of these are very junior politicians, and they got into it because they wanted to be an activist or something. Letting them know, hey, we are this small of a fraction of what is actually going on the negative side of things, and here's all of the positive things that we're doing. Talking about the organizations that NBAA and other operators support, like Corporate Angel Network or Angel Flight, and all of these other organizations that are built specifically to promote and help people outside of business aviation. You're talking about the stuff that makes you feel good about being in this industry with these people and give them that taste and that feeling that, okay, yeah, I need to support this. I had the opportunity a couple years ago when we went to DC to meet with Duckworth, who used to be a helicopter pilot in the military. So she has some history and knew what aviation was, but still didn't fully understand the impact of business aviation. And I feel like in the, 20-minute conversation we had with her, we were able to give her a little bit that she took and kept. And even though she's a, Democratic representative, usually leans away from all of that stuff, she, is kind of on our side because she heard our voice. So we want to promote that, especially with the ones that maybe don't know what business aviation or general aviation is or what it does for their communities. I live in the middle of Iowa, 5 minutes from a regional airport that gets EAS service. So without congressional approval, that airport wouldn't exist anymore. And we actually just lost our Air Guard base that had been there for 110 years, longer than the actual Air Force and Air Guard in existence. It was probably the oldest one in the country. And now it doesn't exist anymore because it was a line item on a spreadsheet. I don't get the Blackhawks flying over my house anymore like I used to, which kind of sucks. I was always real excited about that, or point at them in the sky with the kids. But every now and again, we still get some cool stuff that fly in there. But without support from the government, funds, little airports like that don't exist, and the residents don't get to go out and do what they get to do. The businesses can't fly in to help support their operations. And that has to matter to these politicians because then the constituents are in a worse position than they were before. So spreading that word, letting them know that that stuff exists and why it's important is the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's tough because, again, a lot of the constituents are just harping on a couple of the problems, mainly noise, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you live near an airport. That's a big hot topic. And then when you're not winning the noise debate, you can start saying things like, you know, here's a study that shows that the 100 low lead fuel is causing autism in children, right? That was something that we legitimately dealt with working at Hillsborough, right? And these are like kind of big headline statements to make, and whether they're true or not, again, I don't know the studies on that, but they start to have a community impact. And when you get community support against trying to shut down an airport, well, you got problems then.
Yeah.
But those constituents don't see the ripple effect of what they could potentially be causing, right? The airport goes away. Okay, there's no fixed wing air medical service there anymore. Maybe there's a helicopter because it can land, at the hospital or something. But there goes your ability to be in a fixed wing aircraft for air medical transport. And Hillsborough is a great example. Hillsborough back in like the 80s made a bunch of great deals and incentives for companies to come and have great tax incentives to be in Hillsborough, like Intel and all these other big companies that make computer chips and all these other things that support the infrastructure and employ pretty much everyone in that town, right?
Yeah.
Intel legitimately has an airplane, like at least when I was at Hillsborough, they were using an Embraer, multiple of them, to fly their workers from Hillsborough to Sacramento or somewhere, Silicon Valley, I'm guessing, every day. And, that was to, support that local economy, and Intel obviously being such a big force. And so I don't think people see the ripple effect of those actions, right? When these airports closes, there's a real economic impact.
Yeah.
And when these businesses can no longer be supported by business aviation, or people can't be supported by air medical efforts or even flight training efforts and things like that, then it's just not the best for the economy. And so I think it's really important to try to be that loud voice, but it's an uphill battle, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these politicians that you guys speak to have to run on a platform of aggressive, climate stance and things like that. And they have to get reelected by, showing that they're doing something. And it's very interesting. Those would be I would like to be a fly on the wall for some of those conversations Does Other than Duckworth, have you had other conversations with politicians that lean a little bit more away from, say, business aviation that you felt were actually fairly positive and responsive? You guys know that I love talking about Robinson Helicopter Company. Guys, for 50 years, Robinson has been focused on a singular mission, making helicopter operations more accessible, reliable, and safe. Their vertically integrated manufacturing in the United States allows them to deliver practical, high performance tools for real world missions. And I've experienced it firsthand. I learned to fly and instruct in the Robinson R-22. I built a tour operation using the Robinson R-44, and I even marked a major life milestone. My engagement, you guessed it, was in the Robinson R-66. From training aircraft to turbine platforms, and now the introduction of the new 10-seat Robinson R-88, Robinson continues to innovate and evolve. And now through Robinson Unmanned, they're expanding into autonomous and remotely piloted aircraft for civil, commercial, and defense sectors. Robinson Helicopter Company, supporting your mission, whatever it might be. Visit robinsonheli.com or robinsonunmanned.com to learn more. Climb higher.
Most of the ones that I've had the opportunity to speak with have been on the conservative side because I live in Iowa and everyone here is very conservative, right? Which is not a bad thing for business aviation. Most of the people that we have been able to speak with have been on that side of it. But we do get to kind of jump into the transportation delegation and hear some of their conversations and talk to those guys from time to time. So that's fun. But I don't have anyone else that I can think of other than Tammy, that was on the other side of it, that was not necessarily anti aviation because she was a pilot, or is still a pilot technically, right? But you have to hope that whoever it is you're talking to, you make an impact with. And I mean, even outside of the political side of it, I started a network within business aviation just to get people into business aviation and keep them. Um, you've got to be able to talk to everyone about this and let them know and educate them and get them involved. Like what you're saying, get involved, be active, because if other people outside of our industry don't know what it is that we do, that's where the fear mongering and the
Totally.
almost hate kind of comes from, because they don't know. They just think it's Taylor Swift flying to Kansas City to go watch Travis play a football game, and then she takes off and
Yeah.
oh my God, how much pollutant did that contribute? Well, really, you need to talk about how much money did that contribute to the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah, plus
Seriously.
all the people that went to Kansas City just to see her in the stands, or buying $200 football seats at a football game, the people at the FBO fueling the jet, the people maintaining the jet, or the pilots. It all has an economic impact that's more important than
The hundreds of people that work at the OEM that
yeah.
built the jet.
It's huge. The impact that business aviation, private aviation, including piston aircraft, helicopters, all of it, the impact that we have on the GDP may be a small line item overall, but we have a huge impact on the economic viability of this country specifically. The US is huge in private aviation. And I mean, it's manufacturers, even avionics equipment, the small stuff inside the plane. It's everything. So not
Totally.
having that kills a lot of jobs and a lot of economic impact. You've got people that are graphic designers and writers that help put guides together for how to fix, fly, whatever these aircraft. They wouldn't. What would they do with their career if that didn't exist tomorrow? So
Yeah,
getting
there's so much
people,
to it, right? You had to peel back the layers of the onion. And
yeah,
I've talked about this helicopter specific is and so much of it's like not necessarily something that you could put on a spreadsheet. But I would be willing to say some guy actually messaged me recently and kind of challenged me on this. And I'm like, look, I just say it. There's no data to support it. But I am convinced that, at least for helicopters, that anything that we're involved with, this coffee mug I'm drinking out of here, this protein shake that I drank before, somewhere along the supply chain, there was a helicopter.
Yeah.
Whether it's crop dusting, whether it's providing, utility services that then provide the power to the plant that makes whatever it might be. I feel like helicopters touch pretty much everything that we do in this economy. And then helicopters are used for life saving, right?
Yeah.
Air medical transport, fixed wing as well, of course. Organ transplant. I had a friend, 34 years old, needed a new heart a year and a half ago. Got a heart. The heart was in California. He was up in Washington. They put it on a beach jet, and he got his heart. So there's so much that aviation does that it's good. You brought up organizations like Angel Flight, Operation Helo, which I'm a part of. I'm a board member for, which is a new thing. So that's exciting. But they're using helicopters and civil helicopters to provide necessary disaster relief after things like Hurricane Helene or the flooding in Kerrville. Aviation as a whole does so much great. And of course, can it be more sustainable? Absolutely. The future is going that way, right? They just had a hydrogen propelled helicopter flight demo. That's great. If there's ways to make the industry better, more efficient, that's better for operators. It gets cheaper. It's better for consumers. It gets cheaper. So I'm all for that stuff. But I love that you're advocating, and I love that there's people out there like you that choose to spend their spare time, which I know 4 kids, man. I have 1, and I'm underwater. I'm dying right now. She hasn't slept in like 20 days.
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine, so yeah, I appreciate that. Now, the council that you're on, if someone wanted to get involved into the YoPro council, what is that? How does that happen? What is the process? How can people get involved? What does a commitment look like? And what kind of individuals are you guys seeking to get involved?
So the process itself, even the count, all of it's changed, evolved from when I first joined, like I said, almost 10 years ago now. And we really do, just like with the 40 under 40 award, the way that's evolved over the years has been insane. We're looking for the best of the best people that have that passion, that are doing it selflessly, right? And that's how I got involved, because I wanted to get involved, not because I wanted an in to be able to sell something, right? So does it come back around and kind of pay you back in the end? Either because you feel good about it, or in some way, because you're building relationships, you're going to get something back out of it. But because you want to get involved and you want to make a change, that's the people we're looking for. That's what we want. I believe so. I'm on my last year as past chair of the organization, and I've taken a huge step back to let my current leaders that I helped push into the organization take that mantle and step forward. So they're handling a lot of it. But I know the year that I was more actively involved, we had maybe 40 people apply to join the council, but we only had 4 seats. So narrowing that down was tough. And it's the same with the 40 under 40 award. You get 500 people nominated and you have to whittle that down to 40 people. You want to make sure you're finding the cream of the crop. But whether you're 20 or 39 and you want to get involved, you want to be active, you have a role with a company in business aviation, apply online, nbaa.org. There's a professional development tab. That's where all the YoPro stuff lives. Get on there and apply to join the council. They're looking at applications next month when we get together in DC. And that's also when we're reviewing for the 40 under 40 award. So we'll have some announcements to be made shortly thereafter that too. If you have that passion and your job just happens to be in business aviation, check it out. It's totally worth doing. I've made so many friends. You talk about making friends and building your network. I have so many friends just from my experience with YoPro that are better than the friends that I have that live in my immediate area. talk to them more often, see them more often, go to their wedding or learn about their kids' graduation or whatever, that are closer than people that live closer to me, just because those relationships mean so much more. And we've done shit together. We've gone through stuff together that it's just a deeper connection you wouldn't otherwise have unless you reached out and did something like that. So,
Not to mention too, just I've always said the common tie of aviation,
yeah,
right? We just love talking about helicopters and airplanes,
yeah,
and we're all in it and we all understand it. And sometimes it's hard for, I have a good group of friends that I grew up with. A lot of the people I stay in touch with, I see on a regular basis, but they're all doing normal work, right? They're I'm a helicopter pilot. Like that's weird, right? Because it's such a small percentage of people that are involved in aviation. And so when you get to be around like-minded people,
yeah,
it's just fun. I would say that's probably my best friends in the world are also in the industry, right?
yeah,
We just can relate, and we can relate on the great. We relate on why we love helicopters. We relate on why we don't love the industry for certain things, right? Like it's this shared and common experience that brings people in aviation together. And so I think it's really neat. And like, look, if you're going to do something, you should try to seek enjoyment out of it, right? Like if
yeah,
you're going to want to join the council, well, yeah, of course you want to join it to have an impact, but you also want to enjoy what you're doing, or else you're going to be miserable.
yeah,
And I could definitely believe the fact that it's also a really good time, and getting to connect with good people, like-minded individuals. Like you said, you guys are doing some shit together, getting work done, which is
yeah,
cool. And it's an impact, right? Maybe it's a small impact, but it's like if everyone was willing to do something, then that impact grows bigger and bigger. So really cool, Ian, that you're part of that. Let's transition over to the Crosscheck podcast with you and Rob.
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, why you ended up starting that, and some of the cool conversations that you've had.
The idea behind that came about almost 5 years ago now. I think I mentioned earlier, but like I started with a company called Business Air, selling classified ads for aircraft for sale, and grew up into managing director of that platform. We got rolled into a company that was buying other media companies. Rob was working there on the digital media side, so we got to know each other working together for a short period of time. And then somewhere along the lines, business changed, whatever. We both ended up laid off from said company. Went off to our own little things, but in that same time, I think separately, because we didn't talk about this until a couple of years ago, but separately, we were both wishing that we had done some sort of business aviation centric podcast. And I saw he was doing something on LinkedIn, messaged him, and was like, "Hey, you're doing this EV podcast. Have you ever done one for business aviation? Because I know you were involved in business aviation when we worked together at flying." And he's like, "Yeah, actually, I was going to reach out to you about this." It's like, "Oh, okay. How funny is that, right?" But because of my time leading a media organization, working in the trenches in sales, working with NBAA Yo Pro, and getting involved in other places in the industry. Plus, I travel a lot for work because I'm in business development, so I get to go to these events. Just got back from one yesterday. I leave on Tuesday to go to another one, and I'm meeting these people constantly that are interesting, have crazy stories or, impactful things. It's like I want to talk to these people officially and not just at the bar over a cocktail about what it is that they do or what they've done for the industry, how they started their business. And I'm collecting all of these friends and people in the industry that have amazing stories and have done amazing things. Let's talk about it. I by happenstance met I think she's the third technically female pilot for the Thunderbirds.
Yeah, cool.
At like third ever female pilot. She's also got doing a book tour and was doing some speaking with NBAA. And because of my association with NBAA and a couple of like cross friends, got to meet her and have a chat. I was like, "Hey, do you want to join me on this podcast?" That was kind of where it became real, because I have someone that's actually got star power or something really cool to talk about. Not that all of our guests don't have great stories, but
Yeah, come on. I was
you
on. I
know,
was the best guest ever.
yeah. Well, I think you were the interview right before her too, so she had big shoes to fill stepping into
Of course, yeah.
that seat.
I
But
didn't stand a chance. She's
yeah,
much more of a badass than I am.
oh yeah, but like just having those conversations with people that are much more interesting than you are. And maybe I'm dragging myself a little bit there because I feel like I'm a decent person and have a lot to talk about too. But to be able to elevate yourself to a level with somebody who's done huge things personally, professionally, whatever, that you can then engage and get to know a little bit deeper, is really exciting to me. So, I do that through the podcast. I do it with my network, building better networks on a smaller scale, and it helps keep me involved, grounded, and constantly meeting new and interesting people and making new friends. Like you said with your podcast, you've done, probably 20 times the number of episodes Rob and I have. So I can imagine the number of friends that you have through that, but the ones that I've interviewed now through mine make me feel a little bit more connected to them. Like next week, I'm looking forward to going and seeing Neil or Jack or Rob or whoever that I just interviewed a few months ago and talked to about their career and their life on the crosscheck. That now I can see them again and continue that conversation, but more candidly, privately. And usually because it's business aviation, over a cocktail in a bar somewhere.
Mhm.
So nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah.
As always, a special thanks to HeliCASTS for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, HeliCASTS is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. HeliCASTS' team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, HeliCASTS will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text helicopter to 1-855-HELICOPTER. That's helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a HeliCASTS pilot agent will reach out. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. I mean, I think one thing I underestimated about hosting a podcast was just the education purpose that I get. I get to talk to all these people that have done all these things in the industry that I don't do or never have done. And I get to, share 45 minutes to an hour of their life, and what that's all about. And so I feel like it kind of makes me more well-rounded, in the industry. And it's just cool. I feel like I know so much more now about the industry. I understand why OEMs are struggling to deliver helicopters timely, right? Why? Because I've talked to all the CEOs of every major helicopter OEM, and I've learned about some of the supply chain constraints. I've learned about the FAA bureaucracy when it comes to certification. All these things that I would never have any clue about, But again, I get to talk to people that are doing really, incredible, cool things. And I just get to have that conversation. I feel pretty lucky. Sometimes I feel like a total fraud, right? Because I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy,
Yeah.
But look, you create the platform and you're consistent with it, then, maybe you aren't a fraud. Maybe you are a true voice for it. And that's been the coolest part for me of doing the podcast. It's just, and I didn't think that would be the case, right? I don't know. You start something with really no set expectation or thought on what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And selfishly, I only started the podcast for business development. I mean, that was really the true reason. And it's turned into something so much better than that. Especially like I told you, getting to hear the feedback that I get. It's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I have it, and I have an impact, and I think that that's really neat, and that's what I love about podcasting. Until podcast came about, there wasn't really a medium for people to talk about things that they're into, and we were all kind of pickled into having to listen to the Howard Sterns of the world, or whatever. We didn't have much choosing, and now with podcasts, man, you could be interested in listening to Rob's EV stuff. I'm not interested in EV stuff personally, right? But there's probably thousands of people that are interested in that and want to tune in, right? And that's what they get to pick. I'm interested in, aviation topics, or, sometimes I love podcasts, like when I'm doing a project at my home, like a DIY, I'll go and find a podcast on someone that's just done something that I'm trying to do. And it's like, man, this is so cool. It's just so educational. You get to learn so much. Now, you guys are on a little break right now from the podcast. Are you guys picking it back up?
Yeah, the hope is to start recording some episodes again this fall. Rob, I've hopefully, and I don't know if I should say this or not, by the time this airs, it'll probably be official, but I've been quietly, and maybe not so quietly, recruiting Rob to come join me at globalair.com. We're looking for someone in digital content, and he's somebody that I know that's really good at that world. So bringing him on board there has kind of eaten up some time and focus. But also he's got a million other projects he's been doing too. And I started my career with globalair.com. So we took probably 3-4 months to just regroup and bring in some new episodes on here, hopefully real soon. Looking to make it more legit, not just through sponsorships, but just consistency and keeping it going in perpetuity. I don't ever want to stop doing it, not necessarily for the celebrity of it, because you get people that come up to you and ask to join you because they think it's cool or they think that you're interesting, but it's more for always being the student of learning from these people and having these conversations. I don't ever want to stop doing that. That's awesome. Even if no one listens to it. I couldn't say how many listeners we really have right now, but it's definitely not what it could be. And I don't really care. It's more, it's kind of a selfish passion project, if nothing else, that I would love to continue to do forever. But I know there's a financial aspect to it.
I think consistency. I think the most important thing with podcasting is consistency. I started the podcast, I did like 12 or 13 episodes and stopped, and I didn't do anything for like a year. And then kind of got talked back into doing it, felt like it would be important. And man, that was, I think, close to 4 years ago, maybe 3.5, when I was like putting my head down and I'm doing it and I'm not going to miss a date, And so I think for the last 3.5 years, I've pushed out a podcast every single Tuesday. And what people don't understand is it's a lot of work, and most of the time you ain't making any money, right? You certainly don't get into niche style, podcasting to pay the bills. I'm very fortunate because I have a great relationship with, Vertical and Vertical Plus now on the HeliCASTS platform. And they are been such a great support. Shout out to David there on the MHM team. He does kind of all the back end editing, puts it all together. Like, I'm so fortunate because that's the hard part, right? It's like, this is the fun part. And then there's all this other stuff. We were talking about before we were recording, just like scheduling people, right? People are busy, so I finally just made a decision like, well, these are the dates I'm recording. And if you can make it, great. If not, we'll see you next month type of situation. Creating some automations to send out, reminders and what to expect for the podcast, all those things, like, make it a little bit easier, and take some of the workload off. But yeah, it's podcasting is awesome. And the cross check was I loved coming on. I love being able to talk about helicopters. And you and Rob both have great energy, and it was a very easy interview for me to be on. So that was fun, and I appreciate you guys having me on. If you haven't checked out the Cross Check podcast, go check it out. I'm guessing, Ian, you can find it on all your podcast platforms
everywhere
where you enjoy your podcasts. Obviously, you have to start with mine. So listen to the one that they did with I'm in the opposite seat, right? I'm being interviewed. I'm telling my story. So maybe you haven't heard that before. And I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, Ian, thank you so much, man, for coming on and chatting about business aviation. We, again, what I love, it kind of went a different direction than I thought it would, to be honest, but I think it went the perfect direction. I love talking about some of the things that matter in the industry right now. And, if you're listening and you're a helicopter person, get involved. VAI is a great start. MBAA is also a place, right? Again, business aviation and helicopters is kind of like white collar, blue collar, in my opinion. Like, it's just kind of how I've felt about it, but it doesn't need to be that way. I think that if more helicopter people got involved in organizations like MBAA, then we would have greater support throughout both sectors, right? And, helicopters do play an important part into business aviation. And so I know my listeners, you love hearing about helicopter pilots and when I talk to helicopter pilots, but these episodes are also super important because we're talking about real life issues that really matter for the industry. And if you want to have a long-term sustainable career in this industry, these are the conversations that might hopefully spur you to say, you know what? I haven't been a VAI member and now I want to be one. Yeah. I haven't attended a conference like MBAA or Verticon. I want to do that. They're fun. The conferences are so fun, right? It's like, I always say it's like 40,000 helicopter dorks in the same place. Like, that's what do we talk about? We talk about helicopters. It's freaking awesome, right? And so the conference side of it's certainly a highlight. My wife always says it's like, you're going back and you see a lot of the same people, you make new friends, and it's like it's not like a day's gone by. The conversation just picks right back up. And so it's so fun to be involved, and I'm lucky just to be a small piece of it, specifically with the podcast. This past year at Verticon, got to talk to Francois. He's the new president. Again, talk about a badass guy, right? Just like a cool pedigree, and a guy that was getting paid a ton more money to run a business that chose to come over and lead VAI, right? Talk about being selfless. That's awesome. Those are the type of people that we need. So, Ian, I appreciate you coming on and being a part and a voice in the aviation industry. If you're interested in learning more about the YoPro Council, I think you said it was mba.org, right?
Yep. Yeah. And then just find the professional development tab.
It's too late for this year. I think the voting ends. It'll definitely be ended by the time this releases. But next year, if you feel compelled to nominate me for the 40 under 40, I got a couple years left. I'm 38 in like 2 weeks from now. So
yeah, you're good.
We'll see what happens. I'm trying to get involved, right? I want to be more part of the industry. When I went to MBA last year, I felt like a little bit of fish out of water. I'm so connected in the helicopter side, and I love that. And so I'm hoping that I can be more connected in the business aviation side, especially as I start to dabble more into business aviation with North American aircraft brokerage. So Ian, thanks so much for chatting with me. To Vertical Plus, Vertical Magazine, thank you guys for the Vertical HeliCAST platform and all that you do to support this podcast and the other podcasts on the platform. And to my favorite people, the listeners, couldn't do it without you. Appreciate it, and we'll catch you for another edition of the Helicopter Podcast soon. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks.
Please stay tuned for a final word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
You guys know that I love talking about Robinson Helicopter Company. Guys, for 50 years, Robinson has been focused on a singular mission, making helicopter operations more accessible, reliable, and safe. Their vertically integrated manufacturing in the United States allows them to deliver practical, high-performance tools for real-world missions. And I've experienced it firsthand. I learned to fly and instruct in the Robinson R22. I built a tour operation using the Robinson R44, and I even marked a major life milestone. My engagement, you guessed it, was in the Robinson R66. From training aircraft to turbine platforms, and now the introduction of the new 10-seat Robinson R88, Robinson continues to innovate and evolve. And now through Robinson Unmanned, they're expanding into autonomous and remotely piloted aircraft for civil, commercial, and defense sectors. Robinson Helicopter Company, supporting your mission, whatever it might be. Visit robinsonheli.com or robinsonunmanned.com to learn more. Climb higher.
As always, a special thanks to HeliCASTS for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, HeliCASTS is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. HeliCASTS' team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, HeliCASTS will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text helicopter to 1-855-HELICOPTER. That's helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a HeliCASTS pilot agent will reach out. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.